Hi and good morning and welcome to Thailand. Here we are, another video, and I've decided to have a go at a video that a thread that, well, it wasn't so much a thread really, a video I saw on Calico Silver's channel where he attempted to go through what he considered to be his essential albums, which reflected his musical taste, his life, etc, etc. Well, I spent a few weeks mulling over this, and unfortunately at first attempt I had far too many albums, didn't know which ones to leave off. So now I'm going to tackle it from a particularly personal angle, and I'm going to choose albums that have memories to me in terms of relationships, in terms of how I emotionally felt at the time. Many of them involve women, and there's a surprise. Some of them involve drugs, and they follow my life span, so to speak, starting at secondary school with adolescence, and then I'm going to look at how people and places affected me, my friendships, my marriages, the countries that I visited with my music, particular events in my early youth that really impacted my musical taste. And it was going to be a bit of a jumble, but I hope you sort of gather the feel of it. Another point worth noting, I've been listening to some albums from the 90s recently, and I have to confess that although at the time I probably thought they were great albums, and they still are, for me I had an absence of memory to them, and although I knew that the album was a good album, I couldn't really recall any of the details, so I've jettisoned all those, and these are ones that stick very vividly in my head. So let's get started. So the first one, and I will actually be putting slides up. I have a number of these on vinyl, but it gets in the way, and I really need to focus on what I'm saying rather than positioning a vinyl record so that you can see it. Believe me, I have all these albums. I was at secondary school, and I was in, I was 15 at the time, and music was becoming more of an issue, of course, albums particularly. And there was a guy I knew in my class. He was from two countries actually. His mother was I think was French, and his father was English. Anyway, he wandered into school with Beggar's Banquet under his arm, and I've mentioned this in other videos, I think. And from that moment I became curious about the Rolling Stones from the album point of view. I'd always loved the singles but never acquired an album, and latterly I did, and this now has become an album where I'm reminded of him. Next up, probably my favourite album of all time, Electric Ladyland from 1969, Jimi Hendrix Experience. And again, I'm drawn back to an emotional experience where I met a young teenage girl who had a hairstyle very similar to Jimi Hendrix, but her hair was orange, and we were into the psychedelic sort of phase of our adolescence. And I remember going to her house. Don't ask me how I managed to maneuver my way into that, but I met her family, and she managed to steer me into her bedroom, not for any of those funny business, we were far too young for that, but she did want me to experience a little bit of marijuana called cannabis, and also I managed to feast my ears on the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Electric Ladyland. And so the combination of her, the album, and of course the ganja has stuck with me throughout my life, and Electric Ladyland just is still to this day. I get a chill when I listen to it. Next up is an album by Led Zeppelin, their debut album. I didn't actually buy this album at the time, but I'm putting it in there because in 1974 I had the good fortune to get a ticket for the Led Zeppelin Live at Earl's Court tour, and I went along there and witnessed Jimmy Page using the bow to play Dazed and Confused as part of the set. The venue wasn't exactly ideal for sound, it has to be said, but the whole impact of seeing that meant that I had to include an album by Led Zeppelin, and I'm choosing the debut, which I consider to be their best. Okay, last one in this short segment. Beatles, you can't escape Beatles. I was torn between Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper. I've lumped Abbey Road in as an essential, basically because I just love singing words to a particular song on that album that really encompasses being happy, and it's called Here Comes the Sun, written by George Harrison. Whenever I hear that, I think of Abbey Road. I have a copy on vinyl, and I don't play the vinyl anymore because I haven't got a turntable here, but I do play the album, and it is an essential listen. But I could have picked Sgt. Pepper. I am selecting, I think, 18 in total here. I think Calico Silver went for 20, so I've just under him. My next offering is Nursery Crime by Genesis, and it has to be said that this was, I heard this album played live, and it was one of my very early experiences of a live gig. I wouldn't say it was a concert because the venue was the Gin Mill Club, which was a very small club adjacent to a hotel in a small town called Godalming, which was located very near Charterhouse School, which of course was where the band met. Messrs Gabriel, Rutherford, Banks, they all met there in Charterhouse, which is called a public school, which actually is a private school, such as the problems of language for those born in England. And I saw the album tracks laid out in this small club in front of me. I could almost touch Peter Gabriel, and of course he was dressed in his theatrical costumes, and the sound was extremely intense. Only 100 odd people there, and a wonderful experience. And I was 16 at the time. They were previewing this album, and they also played a lot of the previous album, Trespass. Absolutely, and a lot of alcohol was passed by my lips as well, and we went there on a Sunday night. So Nursery Crime, Genesis live, well, you know, absolutely essential. And I'm going to touch on one more with regard to that venue, and I saw at about the same time Black Sabbath, and they performed their solo album, their debut album, not their solo album, their debut album, at this venue, and I can picture the man himself, Ozzy Osbourne, sort of screaming into his mic as Tony Iommi started to take us through the heavy guitar riff. And yeah, it certainly did feel very sort of inspired by the supernatural listening to it, possibly because quite a few bottles of Newcastle Brown Ale had passed my lips at that time. Another event that sticks very firmly in my mind. My memory of this is very clear. It was the 1972 Crystal Palace Bowl concert, which was headlined by Yes, but it was the first and only opportunity that I ever had to watch the Mahavishnu Orchestra, who were second on the bill that day. It was a lovely, warm, sunny day, and I had the opportunity of listening to the Inner Mountain Flame, which is my essential album. They played it all, and the band were John McLaughlin on guitar, Rick Laird on bass, the absolutely awesome Billy Common on drums, on keyboards Jan Hammer, and then this crazy American Jerry Goodman, who'd previously been with the band Flock. It was an amazing concert, and I was actually pretty sober that day. Now to friends. Friends have always had a tremendous impact on my music. Without them, I would not have really gone down a number of roads and acquired the albums I got. And certainly in my teenage period, my friends were able to open my eyes to their taste, which soon became my taste. I want to talk about a 1972 album that I consider to be essential, and I've got a review of it on my channel. It's Stephen Stills' Manassas, a double album released in 1972, and I have to thank my dear friend, my dear teenage friend Simon. I won't tell you his surname, but he was one of two of my closest friends through secondary school and into early youth. And I remember going round to his house, and he would say, "John, sit down, I've got this album I want you to listen to." And I duly did, and sort of shrugged my shoulders usually at the beginning of hearing these masterpieces. And then of course I heard them again, and then my curiosity was such that I had to get hold of the copy, because I was a collector and always have been a collector. Manassas is an absolute classic. It's the peak of Stills' recording career as far as I'm concerned. It introduced me to salsa music, which I really hadn't touched up until that time. Also I started to get a slight interest in country music, but not that much, but it dabbled in it, and I've since grown to love the side on the Manassas album, which is mainly country music, American country music. So thanks a lot, Simon. Sorry that our friendship didn't last, but that's a tale of life, I guess. Another friend, Dave, he was part of our trio from secondary school, and Dave became a very good graphic artist, and he also relocated from our hometown, which was Guildford in Surrey, to Eastbourne by the coast. And when he left school, he ended up down there at art college. His mother's family had contacts down there, and he sort of knew the place. Anyway, cut to the music. Well, I used to go down to his bedsit and sit in with him, and he had developed a really strong record collection, and there were all these bands that I really hadn't heard of in any detail, and I'm going to choose one, and it's the fourth album by King Crimson called Red. I think it's the fourth, maybe the fifth. Anyway, I listened to this album in his room, and I thought, my God, what's going on here? As it crashed against my senses. Now it is the album that I choose if I want to listen to King Crimson. I just love the first side, the title track, of course, One More Red Nightmare, and the middle track, which I always forget the title of it, which is an absolutely beautiful sort of classically influenced ballad. Okay, let's move on then. We're moving up to 74 now. This was an emotional night in my musical background. It was Hammersmith Odeon, London, England, after a period of time where Eric Clapton had been absent due to his heroin addiction. He slowly started to, with encouragement from fellow musicians, get back from the death virtually, and I saw him on this 461 Ocean Boulevard tour in 1974, and I went there with a girl, and this was the girl I met at a youth club when I was about I was about 15 and she was about 13, I think. Maybe I was 16, she was 13. We were now a little bit older. I was 20 and she was 17, and her mother amazingly gave her permission to come with me all the way to London to this huge auditorium, and she got to see the legendary Eric Clapton with a band that to some extent resembled the one that he had when he was performing with Derek and the Dominoes, but 461 Boulevard tour is what it was called, and it was one of those amazing nights. You know, I can remember vividly his rendition of Little Wing, the Jimi Hendrix song, and of course he finished with Layla, and it was all so beyond belief, really, and I put it in to this video, and of course the album would have to be Layla and the Assorted Love Songs, released in 1970, but that's my pick. I want to move on now, and the following year, in 1975, in January, in the new year, I witnessed yet another superlative concert that I went to in London. It was at the Rainbow Theatre in North Finsbury, and it took some getting to, because I had to get on the tube, but I had tickets for the afternoon show on, and let me check, it was January the 19th, 1975, the afternoon show to the Warner Bros. Tour. They were doing a series of concerts where there would be three bands on, performing very short sets, and they had an afternoon show and an evening show, and I went to the afternoon show, and Graham Central Station opened. I can't remember much of that, but I certainly remembered a hell of a lot. The middle band were Little Feat with Lowell George and Bill Payne and the rest of the gang, and they were second billing to the Doobie Brothers, and I'll always remember it because the set was full of Dixie Chicken and full of Last Record Album, and it was astonishing, the pace with which Richie Hayward and the Sam, whatever his name was, on bass, how they put together, and the percussion, of course, coupled with the frantic guitar playing, the twin guitar playing of Paul Barrere and Lowell George, who for a large part of the set was playing slide, of course. And it was a wonderful performance by them, such that when we got to the end, the crowd bayed for more, and I think there was two encores, and amazingly the Doobie Brothers were due on, And on the second encore, the guy who was with the Doobie Brothers, Jeff Skunk Baxter, he was with them for a brief period touring. He came on stage with Little Feat to do their encore, and then when the Doobie Brothers came out onto the stage after the crowd eventually calmed down, he turned round and said to us all, "Let's give a big hand for the Little Feat." And they were the main band, and they were encouraging the audience to applaud the support band. And I'd never heard anything as so astonishing in all my life. But it happened, and I was there, and I've got a ticket stub, not mine, but I found it on the internet, and I can swear on my father's life this is a true story. And on that basis, Dixie Chicken has to be an essential album.